This time, all of our guests in the audience to silence their cell phones. I would like to thank Deputy Liggett for being with us tonight. Thank you, sir. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Kenneth Peterson, followed by a moment of silence. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Okay. Yep, that's right. Our first, yep. Thank you. I would please ask that all board members signify your presence on your devices at this time. Everyone's present. We will begin. Our first item of business is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion from the floor? Motion to approve by Mr. Gregory, second by Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. In approving the agenda, the board also approved the following consent items. Approval of school board meeting minutes, September 15th, 2014. Approval of board policy revisions, second reading. 3.300, equipment and supplies records, deleted. Policy 3.4002, transportation records, deleted. Policy 6.306, demonstrations and strikes, deleted. Approval of recommendations for field trip fee requests. Approval of 2015-2016 budget timeline. Approval of McKinney-Vento Act, Education of Homeless Children and Youth Grant Program. Approval of electronic sign for Independence High School. Approval of construction change order for Nolensville High School. The next item of business is public comment. Board Policy 1.403 currently limits public comment to 15 minutes. There are currently 10 people who have signed up to speak. As I call your name, please approach the podium. If you would then please state your name and address before your comments, and then please try to limit your time to as briefly as possible in order that we can have as many speakers as possible. To begin with, Mr. Todd Salon.
Thanks. Hopefully that works. Talking on the microphone that way. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Williamson County Board, I'm here today because I'm offended, I'm astonished by certain board members wanting to insert religion into the public school arena. Dr. Burgos, I think you backed down last week when you said that you didn't want to invite frivolous lawsuits. Actually, I think the only frivolity here is the board's desire, at least your desire, to insert religion into our students' lives, and that's a violation of United States laws as well. Mr. Mazzara, your actions in this arena have also offended me. On July 30th, you sent an email from your personal email address. However, you identified yourself as a Williamson County Board member, and you asked people to pray for our schools. Whether or not you broke the law because you sent that email from your personal email, you certainly violated the spirit of the law. Now I hear certain board members support changes such as renaming winter holiday to Christmas holiday that only serves to further add to the divisiveness, discomfort, and quite frankly, adds nothing of value for the children in our school district as they grow into and I emphasize, an increasingly diverse 21st century. So just wanted to make sure that I made my points known there. And then let me close with, in a very short time, I think we've sort of seen in the press a circus atmosphere with the board, and it seems as if you're routinely violating your own code of ethics that you've agreed upon being elected. Two of the points from that code of ethics are that at all times think of students first, and secondly, at all times represent the entire community and refuse to represent special interests. I think that if you believe you're only here to represent those who voted for you, then obviously you're violating those responsibilities. So I just close with, it's time to end the division. I think some embarrassment I've heard from people nationally and partisanship, and get back to continuing the success that we've had in our Williamson County schools going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking, sir. Our next speaker is Audrey Buffington.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Superintendent Looney. I'm Audrey Buffington, 430 Lena Lane, Franklin, Tennessee. My birth date is 10/6/31, and my blood pressure is 120/80. I throw that in only because at the last meeting last week, I was here at 3:30 to be sure I could hear the discussion on the referendum, and I found out that there were going to be 155 people going into a room that seated 55 people, and I was way over there in the door. There was no way I was going to be able to get up there. And then I said, I was told I could watch it on the screen, and I thought, well, shoot, if I can watch it on the screen, I'll do that at home. So I left, and I had a really exciting weekend. I watched your program on Saturday, and I watched it again on Friday, and I emailed many of you with some comments that you asked about during the hearing. So it probably worked out better that way anyway. I wanted to talk about the Common Core referendum briefly and tell you, originally I was not against the Common Core. In 2009, when I heard that they were going to have standards for the entire United States in math, I thought, oh, wow, that can't be too bad. I mean, California and Maine and Tennessee will all be teaching fractions at the same time and decimals and percents and everything. This is going to be good. And then I read the standards after they came out. I found out what was omitted. I found out the mistakes that were there, the poor language that was there. We have so many great math educators across the United States, and they came up with a document like that it couldn't be good for anybody. And so I started working against and kind of preaching, so to speak, against Common Core. I was delighted when I heard that you were going to be working on a referendum, and I was hoping it would be something like, we, the 12-member board of Williamson County, support the desire and effort of the state legislature and the Department of Education of Tennessee to provide superior education for our students. We, however, respectfully request the legislature and the governor to repeal the Common Core state standard statute as soon as possible for the following reasons. And then I was able to get a copy of your resolution today, and I found out that after I got through all the whereases, it doesn't really ask them to do that at all, but sort of kind of says, well, we really want to do our own thing, instead of coming right out and saying, get rid of the Common Core standards for the state of Tennessee, and the sooner the better. Some of the people who are speaking in favor of know a lot of the talking points, but haven't been able to get into the depth, as many of you need to do before you can make a decision, yes or no, on these things. SCORE, for instance, has pushed this for a long time, but if you get $250,000 from the Gates Foundation to support it, yeah, I suppose you would go out there and tell all of your constituents to do that. I've read everything that's been in the newspaper over the months, and I would call some people. The Chamber of Commerce had a big article one time, and I called one of the members and said, you said that a lot of people from Tennessee were on this committee. Please tell me who, because I've been searching ever since I've been down here. She said, I'll look up my source and get back to you. That was the last I heard from that conversation. And then I called a couple of more people who had written articles on there who were just kind of speaking off the top of their head and had not done the research, and that makes me very sad. So I'm here tonight to ask you to vote on the resolution to get rid of the Common Core, not a Mickey Mouse kind of nice, sweet resolution that you have here, which isn't going to offend anybody, but one that tells all of the representatives, senators, governor, everybody that you can think of, that we need to do this on our own. We can do a better job than this that was established by the National Governors Association and the Association of State School Officers. And I apologize for going to the door, but I shouldn't be driving too much after dark. So after I've heard the public speak, I will go home and again watch you on TV. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. If I could, please remind all of our speakers to please be as brief as possible so that we can get through everybody. Next speaker is Julie West.
Hello, I am Julie West, and I'm here to speak about the waiver that we are told that Williamson County Schools received from Common Core, that we are apparently able to develop our own standards. I began to hear from friends around the state and other districts concerned about educational issues, and they had heard that Williamson County got a waiver, so they called and they wanted a waiver of their own, and they were told there are no waivers, that the state writes the standards. So then I got a copy of what's being called the waiver letter, and it basically, well, the portion addressing Common Core specifically, or the standards specifically, says the state's academic standards adopted by the State Board of Education in multiple subject areas establish a set of expectation for learning and represent a baseline or minimum requirement from which local school districts operate. Districts, of course, then, districts have the authority and the responsibility to develop their own curriculum, shape instruction, select textbook, and other instructional materials. Although Williamson County Schools must ensure the state's minimum standards are met, you have the flexibility to determine how to structure your work and are welcome to operate in a manner that exceeds the minimum requirements set by the state. Nowhere in the document could I find a waiver. And I'm sorry, but it feels painfully familiar. It feels a lot like School Digger, when we were told that Williamson County Schools had the #1 schools in America, and then we find out after the fact that School Digger made it pretty clear that their data couldn't be used that way. So if folks in other districts are being told, hey, there's not a waiver out of Common Core, and if the document itself doesn't seem to have a waiver at all, I'm wondering why the people, once again, are being told something that apparently simply is not true. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Eric Gothorp.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank each of the representatives who are replying to me via email, the ones that have. I truly appreciate the time and the phone calls that some of you made to me, and I appreciate the conversation about our education system. I want to discuss with you some eye-opening conversations that I've had with students. I actually live in College Grove. My city is Eagleville, but I'm closest to College Grove. And about 3 years ago, I had a conversation with a 13-year-old young man who was doing some yard work for me. And he worked 9 hours, and I told him I'd pay him $7 an hour. He is in high school now, and 9 times 7, most of us realize is 63. He told me I owed him $37. I thought about that, and I said, you know what? This young man's his future is limited. I know now that people, not good people, are going to steal from this man the rest of his life. And it really made me think about what was going on at my school system. My daughter's in the 5th grade. In 2010, standards of accountability and increased standards were introduced to this state. And in 2010, we began to get some national attention for how could we come up from 47th to maybe the top quarter of the country. As I said, my daughter's in 5th grade. Last year, I was helping her with her math homework. I have a finance degree. And she was doing and solving a math problem in a way I had never seen before. She actually said to me proudly, Dad, I can figure out this problem in 3 different ways. And that's the type of problem-solving techniques that employers and kids of the future need to have. They need to be able to use Apples, IBMs. They need to be able to use whatever India and China come up with us next. We need to realize that our kids in this state, in this county from College Grove, we're competing against other states and kids that get educated in those other states. I was thrilled by the new program. I also want to compliment my principal, Kathy Lillard. Our school just received an award for performance based upon an increase in math TCAP scores of 28 points. I believe she was given the empowerment by accountability and higher standards to remove teachers of the past that were not challenging our students. I think it's very important that when children graduate from our education system, that they not have limits on their potential. We need to reinforce our standards to be above those standards and accountabilities in other states. I would challenge you in your rewritten resolution that I sat through with many hours the other evening, where do you talk about in those standards to be above standards outside of our state? Right now, you all are just looking at ourselves in this state, and besides Williamson County and maybe one other county, the rest of it isn't looking that prosperous. I would challenge you to rewrite that last sentence, to come up with something that says we will demand higher standards that put our state in the top quarter. I really want to appreciate your time. I'd also let you know that my daughter, Gable, wanted me to mention that she would prefer if she didn't have any lunch monitors any longer, and that lunch could be a much more fun opportunity for her. So thank you for your time, and thank you specifically to the representatives that called and emailed me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. We'll take that request under advisement. Our next speaker is Leah Quant. Sorry, ma'am.
Leah Quant, 511 Davis Drive, Brentwood, Tennessee. I'm a retired math teacher. I spend my free time, about 13 hours a week, tutoring students, trying to give them a boost that really needed help in math. I'd heard of Common Core, really did not know what it meant until last fall. At that time, 2 of my students came to me and they started geometry. They were confused, they were frustrated. They said, we're given packets of material at the beginning of the week. Then we're divided into groups of 4.
Ma'am,
And then the teacher says,
if you could speak.
Yes.
I think people are having a hard time
I'm
hearing
sorry.
you. Thank
They
you.
were divided into groups of 4, and then they were told, figure this out yourself. There was no instruction, there was no teaching, and the teachers did not answer questions. This infuriates me, simply because in order to be proficient in math, you have to learn a vocabulary, you have to learn definitions, you have to learn certain rules, you have to become proficient in skills. Then you combine your knowledge and you're able to critically think and solve problems. Common Core does not do this. Common Core is killing math, not only in this state, but in every state that's using it. I want to see Common Core stopped.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker. Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Jason Grant.
Hello all. Again, you all may remember me by the 5.5 hours that I stood outside patiently as I listened to what happened and transpired on Thursday night's meeting. It was very informative. It was surprising at times. And I think at the end of the day, I even mentioned this to Jay, who was my district representative, that I'm not sure how positive the end result was. And when I say that, I mean that in all sincerity. I was very disappointed, very displeased by several members and their behavior, and it's not a Common Core pro or a Common Core against. It was just a surprise that in my experience, there's been a certain level of professionalism, and I'm not sure that a high school debate team couldn't have done a better job of putting on a show. We expect more of you, and so I challenge you each to think about that. Code of ethics that I hope you approve, that was signed by last year's board of directors, indicates Section 2, which has already been pointed out, which I will represent at all times the entire school community. And I hope you take that to heart as well. The election results, we've got 138,000 registered voters that are eligible to vote on November 4th. Total tally, you all garnered about 16% of the vote of the district's half. So I'd like you to keep that in mind when parents come to you and say, we have a differing opinion. We're not political. Most of our time is not spent at board of directors meetings or work studies. It's at home with our kids, teaching them the homework that they have and everything else. You've got a really good opportunity right now. We have the top school district in the state of Tennessee, which sounds great, but we are nationally consistently ranked in the lower half of the country. And our students are not just competing. I will piggyback a previous speaker. We are not just competing against other states. We are an international economy, and whether you realize it, want to accept it or not, we're competing against the world. So making us the #1 school district in the nation is short-sighted. We need to be aiming higher than that. This needs to be a district that is #1, if not the top 10 in the world. And I think you can do that. We've got community colleges that have planted new seeds in our community. Why not allow some of the students in our school system to attend college and get together and as a board work with the higher education, with the Board of Regents, to make sure that those credits not only count towards University of Tennessee and all the other state schools, but also applicable in schools of their choice. If they want to go to UCLA or Harvard or Stanford or anywhere else in the country, or the world for that matter. Why are we limiting this to the local economy? I think the debate has gotten to a point where you're fighting neighbor against neighbor, and everybody wants the same thing. Ms. Emerson, you brought a study in from the consortium. One of the things I gleaned from that was, though you were a little exaggerative on some of your claims, I will admit, but 56% of the teachers in that did respond consistently both years were opposed to it. But on the upside, 59.7% who also responded both years said they strongly agreed that teaching to the CCS will improve student learning by year. Now, I'm not a proponent of Common Core one way or the other. I'm a proponent of standards being met for our community so that we can compete globally. We've got Nissan North America, and we've got one of the largest RIAs. You're worried about expenses? I know I'm going over, I apologize, but I think that I'm kind of taking a middle line for this, and I think it's something that needs to be heard. Get them in co-ops. This needs to be opened up to everybody. You want math, science, technology? We've got some of the greatest companies in the world in our backyard. We can do that. And lastly, if you're worried about expenses, because I know that's going to be a big issue, the growth, alternate schedules. And when I say that, look at it more kind of a college standpoint. No one teacher has their own classroom in a college standpoint. Everybody has their office and they have shared classrooms. Move the school day to accommodate that. Be creative. Have fun with this. This can be something so much bigger than it is, and yet we're stuck in petty partisan politics. It really boils down to it. Whether you want to admit it or not, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, that's what this is. And it's so much bigger than that, and I do not want you all to miss the opportunity to do that. I've got a kindergartner, 2 younger daughters that are in preschool, and I got one doing Thanksgiving. You've got me for the next 23 years. So please make me happy, because I'll be up here exuding all the energy that I have now. With respect to continuing the growth and to be able to pay for it, Harvard has an endowment. Yale has an endowment. Why not get together with the county and work with one of the largest RIAs in Brentwood, Trust Corps, and I think it's one of the largest in the Southeast, and work on setting up a potential endowment for the school system. Be creative. You don't have to be limited by what's done in the past. You don't have to prepare yourself to run the school district. Open up your minds and think about the future, because it's super critical. It's not just for us, it's for them. You know, many of you will not be here in 23 years. I'll be glad not to have to show up again. But I want you to keep that in mind when you're making the decisions that you make. It's not about politics. It's not about right versus left. It's about our children's future and the future of our country, and we can be the best in the nation and probably the best in the world if we really put our minds to it.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
I certainly don't want to interrupt any of our speakers tonight, but if you could please remind yourselves to keep it as brief as possible. We have other speakers, and it's not fair to them if we take away from their time. So, next speaker is Erin Grubben.
Hi, I'm Erin Grubben. I live at 2017 Fiona Way in Spring Hill. And on a totally different subject, I'm concerned about the overcrowding of the buses. There have been as many as 5 third graders on my son's in the same seat as my son. That's 5 third graders in one seat. And this has happened more than once just this year. This is a safety concern and one that should, in my opinion, be tops on the board's list of discussion and problems to solve. And I encourage the board to focus on issues that directly affect our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grubben. I believe that is actually on our agenda for tonight to work on a solution for that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Our next speaker is Ms. Amy Wells.
Hi, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak. I live at 303 Gillette Drive, Franklin, Tennessee, and I share the passion that the man ahead of me had, and I may not speak as long, so our time will even out, because I'm very nervous, but I am very concerned as well about our kids, our county, our state, our country, and their education, and I implore you to listen to his idea about being creative and getting outside of the box, and we can only do that if we have the control, the local control, and aren't dictated by the Common Core standards. So I am for a resolution for local control, but I am also for a repeal. I want our legislature to know, our governor to know that we can do much better. Our county has been excellent in the past before this was even on board, and we can continue to be, and we can be a leader for the state if they would give us that chance, and if you all would take that on, I think we would be wonderful. And there's so many reasons, like they would say, well, this would be a gut punch to the teachers. They have a copyright on this. They could be changing it at any time and throw another arrow at the teachers, and it's just that is not a good reason. I mean, I'm for the teachers. I think this is harder on them. They're having to teach the TCAP and whatever is decided to be the assessments for Common Core, which aren't even out there yet. They're not even, the waiver gave us more material we can use, but it's not even going to be tested on the kids, just what the core has. Nothing that we add that might help their education and round it out, but it's not what they're going to be tested on. And will the teachers have time for it? And they're not going to be evaluated on it. Is it going to happen? Let's see. I know I need to get off. I don't know what the time is. Do you know? Time, right?
No, you can go.
Okay. Lastly, and another thing, like how much support staff was added for Common Core to even work and training that could have gone to the teachers with their raises. I mean, that's just another thing. So anyway, thank you for your time, for your service, all of you. And I do want to see business as usual. I was wondering about the student that had to ride in the aisle at the last meeting to Hillsborough Middle. And I'd like to know too if the any contract workers that come on board have to get a 3-tier background check like we do as volunteers. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for speaking. Our next speaker is Vicki Wesson.
That's my married name.
Oh.
It's Wessel.
Wessel.
Yeah, this is very intimidating. I live at 3014 Iroquois Drive. The reason why I'm so passionate about Common Core, it's not petty politics. It is the federal government taking control of the next generation's minds, and it's taking the power away from the parents and teachers and putting it into the federal government. That's huge. It's not petty. It was politically motivated, and most of the people in here don't know anything about Common Core. I'm retired. I'm an empty nester. I've done tons of research because I've been trying to prove Obama's a communist for the last 8 years, and I have proven it. Okay, you can shake your heads. Look up Axelrod, Valerie Jarrett, the Communist Party, U.S. I know, I'm not supposed to say the word. Socialism is phase one of communism. Let me just tell you real quick where Common Core came from. It was conceived by Bill Gates Foundation and the United Nations, who, by the way, controls most of our national landmarks now. Agenda 21 is another globalism, socialism thing. It was sold to the National Governors Association, later the CCSSO. It was developed by Achieve, Inc., a liberal Washington, D.C. think tank. And most involved were associated with the testing industry, who's going to make billions of dollars. So it's not petty politics. And snicker, snicker. This is like Obamacare. Obamacare and Common Core were voted into existence and implemented before anyone read it. That is why everyone's arguing, okay? And I'm worried about my country, and none of you have done research on it. So go to victoriajackson.com and write Common Core into the search box. Last thing I'd like to say is Haslam, who's pretending to be a Republican, appointed Huffman, who voted for Obama. Obama wrote the word Frank 22 times in his autobiography. It's Frank Marshall Davis, and he was a Communist Party member. Read Paul Kengore's book, The Communist. Read Aaron Klein. Read Trevor Loudon. I know, I read. Go figure. Oh, really? And you think
Ma'am?
Common Core is a good
Ma'am?
thing?
Ms. Wessel?
End of it is that, you know,
Yes, ma'am.
my point is, he's not for prayer in schools. Well, Islam is being taught in the curriculum, so you should probably be against Common Core. I'm very concerned about the Islamic propaganda, the socialist propaganda in these Pearson textbooks two Muslims wrote. And, you know, separation of church and state is not in our national documents. It was in a letter that Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptists, and he told them the government would not interfere with them preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's been twisted and abused, but basically there's no such thing as separation of church and state. And if you're going to teach Islam, you should teach all the religions. That's called an education. And my last thing is, my friend here, a lot of people are showing me stuff because they have kids in the system. They don't want them to get tortured. I don't have a kid in the system, so I can say stuff and my kid won't come home crying. Dawn told me about a sexually inappropriate book, and someone else showed me an Islamic, for a month and a half they've been taught Islamic stuff. And I would just like to say I support prayer before a meeting if it's to Jehovah and not Allah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wessel. Our final speaker for tonight is Susan Korest. Susan Korest. Shrest. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I came right from volunteering, so I do apologize. My name is Susan Shrest, and I live at 1254 Habersham Way in McKay's Mill. I have 4 children, 3 that are living, that one in 6th grade, 1 in 5th, and 1 in 2nd. I don't know everything that there needs to know about Common Core. I don't know everything against Common Core. I'm a parent, and I know my children, and I'm just here to say the teachers that they've been blessed to have been amazing. They are getting an excellent education. I have a son who has a specific learning disability when it came to reading, and he has a form of dyslexia, and he's been integrated in the class, and upon going to 6th grade, he has tested out of the Read 180 program, and I'm so proud of him. So again, I'm not for or against. I can only speak with what I know, and that's my children, and they seem to be flourishing quite nicely in the Williamson County school system. And I don't understand why we're trying to fix something that's not entirely broken. It's just me looking at all of the accolades that we've received as a good county with our school system. I, like the others that have been up here, would like to encourage you to dream bigger. And I would also encourage you to utilize some of your great teachers to go out of this county and teach people across the state. I don't believe that we should be keeping our good teachers to ourselves. I think that every child has to live up to their greatest potential. And I think knowing the discrepancy across our county lines, when I look at Davidson County and do some volunteering over in that county, it just makes me say, why is there such a divide? So the only question that I would like to propose is that if we are all going to vote tonight, perhaps against Common Core, I'm just wondering what is replacing that? What does that look like? And I'm a little nervous, you know, when you read about things that it might be replaced with, you get this big fear among people in neighborhoods. And there are a lot of people that feel like me. I do want to tell you that. But right now they're doing homework with their children, and they're at sports, basketball and baseball. And, you know, I wanted to huddle them up and take them with me tonight, but they couldn't because they're with their children, as it should be. But I do represent them, and I'm just so proud to be in the county that I am, and I'm proud of our teachers. And so I'm just wondering, if you're going to replace Common Core, what does that look like? Because right now there's a lot of fear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking. That concludes our speakers. I want to thank everybody for speaking this evening. Our next item of business is the superintendent's report. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. It's good to see everybody this evening. I want to call your attention to page 4 of your board packet, just to highlight some important meetings and dates coming up, both for your consumption but also for the public's consumption. First, on Monday evening at 6 p.m., Williamson County Schools will be participating in the SCORE Award. This is the second year that we have been a finalist for the district award. We also happen to have 2 schools that are finalists for that award as well, and obviously you are invited to attend. On the 28th of October, we will kick off our first Let's Talk Schools meeting at Centennial High School from 6 to 7:30. That will be repeated again at Fairview High School on October the 30th at 6 p.m. Fairview High School from 6 to 7:30. There are a number of other dates that are really important. The most important one that I'm going to call out for you, though, is that we are planning on having a school board retreat on November the 8th. I will say that district operations are going exceedingly well. We continue to struggle, and we had someone speak to this tonight, actually. We continue to struggle to find bus drivers to fill the vacancies that we have. We do have some potential bus drivers in training, but we still are, last count I had, 17 bus drivers short. And we need bus drivers. And so the proposal that we'll be bringing to you tonight will help, I hope, alleviate at least some short-term needs, but we have some long-term strategic thinking to do about how we increase our bus driver pool. That completes my report. I'm going to ask Mrs. Birdsong to please come forward. We're going to recognize some schools, some students, and some employees. And PG, I think we need to go to the front.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mesra and Dr. Looney, if you will come assume your positions. I'm a little bossy. Okay. We are going to start, board members, by recognizing our 3 schools who are going to be honored next month in Washington, D.C. with the Blue Ribbon Award. So if I could ask our Hillsborough school representatives to come forward first. Kari Miller and Alicia Justice, and I'm going to take y'all's picture. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations. And if I could ask our Kenrose representatives to come next, Marilyn Webb, Julie Langford, Rebecca Griffin, Terry Gamble, and Ann Francis Barker. If you all can make your way through. I can, but y'all need to get a little bit cozier. All right, here we go. 1, 2, and 3. Congratulations. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Trinity Elementary School, Chris Schwartz, Reagan Burge, and Kristen Hullett. Thank you and congratulations to all 3 of our schools. That brings our total number of Blue Ribbon schools to 6. They are joining Brentwood Middle School, Grassland Middle School, and Page High School. And again, they will be officially recognized November 10th and 11th in Washington, D.C. So congratulations again. Now we're going to honor some other students. You know, not very often do we get to honor elementary school students because with Student Spotlights, we honor first place state and national students. So I want you to meet Jitten Jolly Rao from Edmondson Elementary School, and she was the recipient of the Tennessee Association for the Gifted Nicholas Green Award, and her teacher is Jennifer Holt. And board members, we have 6 high schools who have members of the All-State Choir. That is the highest choir recognized in the state. And we're going to start with Brentwood High School's representatives, Anna K. Schulte, Jordan Brees, and Andrew Fisher, and their choral director is Natalie Pratt. At Centennial High School, this is Addie Pollard, Jake Cannon, and Cassie Tribuco. And their choral director is Jeff Myrick. I think we have some Centennial fans in the audience. Franklin High School's Caitlin Logan, Ashley Knight, and Elizabeth Schneck. And their choral director is Cynthia Furman. At Independence High School, Drake Cunningham, Kenzie Barnett, and Andrew McGuire under the direction of Mary Lee Atinan. Raven High School has Jenna Nam and Sarah Yang under the direction of Laura Ramey. And last but not least, Summit High School, Scott Brooks, Kayla Hack, Cassie Henriksen, Selena James, Nicole Turner, and Christina Wall under the direction of Jenna Ellsbury. Congratulations to our All-State Choir members. And board members, this is quite exciting. We are going to have 2 representatives in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and 1 for music and 1 for athletics. So we're going to start with music first. Meet Chase Miller from Centennial High School, and Chase is going to be participating in the 2015 U.S. Army All-American Marching Band, and his band director is Scott Miller at Centennial. And then he is going to be joined by Ravenwood High School's own Van Jefferson, who will be playing football in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl football game. His coach is Will Hester. That's quite exciting for us, and I believe a first since I've been here. Let's talk about a cheerleader. Meet Ellie Marquardt from Ravenwood High School. Ellie was named to the 2014-15 Tennessee Cheerleading Coaches Association All-State Cheerleading Squad, and her cheer coach is Miss Stephanie Dykes. We have 2 staff spotlights tonight. We're going to start with Crockett Elementary School. This is Crystal Janning, first place State of Tennessee Artsonia Leadership Award for Crystal. And then in athletics, this is Mike Burgoyne, Franklin High School, who was named the State of Tennessee Boys Soccer Coach of the Year. Congratulations to all of our students, staff, and schools.
Okay, I believe that The next item of business is the board chairman's report. First, I'd like to thank everyone who came out for our Thursday evening work session. It was an extraordinarily large attendance, and I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize for the inconveniences many experienced. I would also like to give some good news in that upon the suggestion by Mr. Wimberly and the work of Dr. Looney and his staff, we will be relocating the venue of future work sessions to a much larger facility. The November board work session will be held at the Professional Development Center, located on Carters Creek Pike, just a little way past Downs Boulevard. Directions can be found on our website, wcs.edu. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to remind the board, as Dr. Looney did, that we do have a board retreat. It will be held on November 8th. Details are forthcoming, it should be a great day, and I am looking forward to it. As well, please put on your calendars the Let's Talk Schools, the 28th of October and the 30th at Centennial and Fairview High Schools. We would also like to take this time to recognize the Boy Scouts of America, Troop 444, here in Franklin for attending. If you'd please stand. Thank you. Their Scoutmaster is Paul Gant, I believe, and they are receiving their communications badge tonight. Thank you. Thank you for coming. That concludes the board chairman's report. Our next item of business is new business, beginning with board policy revisions, first reading. Board policy 1.403, first reading, board meeting agendas. Is there a motion from the floor? Dr. Looney?
I do recommend approval of this revision of policy.
Motion to approve by Mr. Gregory. Yes.
87.
Page 87. Second by Dr. Burgess. Is there any discussion? Mr. Hollett?
Good. All right. Thank you, sir. I'm glad that we're moving in a positive direction about public comment, and that we're looking at meeting our constituents and our residents, our parents' needs as far as letting their voices be heard. That is important. That's one of the things we've really been concerned with lately. The one thing that I would say, I do believe that we're going to find common ground on this, but the one thing I'd like to know before I can fully support this measure, at the very bottom where it says the board may from time to time invite experts and other knowledgeable persons to provide informational presentations as part of the agenda. I just don't want our regular board meetings, if that's the work session, I think that's fine. I just don't want our regular board meetings to turn into PowerPoint conferences. And I mean that respectively, but we could end up in a board meeting that could go on for hours upon hours with people, presenting their different thoughts and different perspectives, which is fine, but I just think that's a better place for the work session. I would just like also to see a little bit more of the details and what knowledgeable persons might be before we just push this through, because the thing is, it's wide open. It's however you interpret it, but it's wide open.
Thank you, Mr. Hollett. Are there any other discussion? Seeing none, we will move to a vote.
Your vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes. Our next policy is 4.401, textbook selection and adoption. Located on page 89. Dr. Looney?
I do recommend approval. Just a reminder, this is first reading only.
Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry. Is there a motion to approve from the floor? Mr. Peterson, second by Mr. Cash. Is there any discussion? Mr. Wimberly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 points that I brought up in the work session and would like to restate them. One is, I don't believe that board members can be a member of a committee that will make recommendations to the board. It would not be proper for someone who participates in a committee work to also vote on the committee's actions. If we want a board member on there, then I would suggest that we include in the policy statement that that board member would need to recuse themselves when the action does come before the board. That's number one. There are a couple of clauses in here that simply state that we will follow state law. I'm not sure it's good policy for us to have policies that say we will follow something that we must follow by state law. So I would ask the committee to look at those clauses. And I really don't think that we need a policy stating that the board will subject or will select a subject matter expert. We have many subject matter experts on textbooks. Certainly, we've got senior management in our school system. We've got principals, and we have teachers who are all subject matter experts and who are represented in the textbook selection committee. So I would ask that the policy committee look at these 3 things when it goes back for discussion. Meantime, I will vote for it today, but ask that those things be considered, voting for it because it is just on first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Our next speaker is Mr. Galbraith.
I brought up the putting a board member as an ex officio member of the committee. My thought process there was we've got a tight time frame, and I wanted, as board members, I wanted us to be as knowledgeable and to be able to speak firsthand to the discussions that were going along in the committee along the way, also with the recommendation. And so I'm not thinking we'll discuss it. I don't think it has to be a discussion here. It'll be for the next policy committee. But I don't think with not being a voting member, I don't think that's going to affect their ability to vote on it and as a board. So.
Thank you, Mr. Galbraith. Mr. Wimberly.
Thanks, Mr. Galbraith. You did remind me of probably the most important point that I meant to make, so thank you for that. And that relates to the time frame. I'd ask the policy committee to look very carefully at this policy to make sure that it fits within the time frame that we have, because one of our significant problems with textbooks is we don't have a lot of turnaround time between the time we get the state list and we have to make a decision and start ordering textbooks. So I would also ask that the policy committee look at that when you discuss it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Dr. Burgos.
Tagging on to yours with the time frame, this year parents were added to the committees for textbook selection at the state level, and I'm excited to see that parents get added, hopefully, in our policy as well. We've been discussing that, and we're all excited, I believe, about that. And so I would also ask that we start getting the procedure for how that's going to occur, so that that process can start, because everything takes time. And I would just like to see that happen quickly.
Thank you, Dr. Burgos. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Our next item of business is the 2014-2015 budget amendment, Central Cafeteria Fund. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, I do recommend approval of this appropriation.
It's located on page 91. Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Hollett. Move to approve by Mr. Hollett. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Wimberly. First on discussion, Mr. Gregory.
Want to make sure you could find me on your monitor over there. I just want to take the opportunity to say kudos to James Rometti and his staff. People don't realize what an exceptional job that the food service department does for the Williamson County school system. They're a self-sustaining system. They take no money out of the budget. They often come in at a profit sometimes, but they do a wonderful job, and I just wanted to recognize them for that.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Any further discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. The next item of business is the resolution for consideration, Common Core. That is found on page 95, but I believe we have an updated version that has been put on your desk. Do we have a motion to approve? A motion motion to approve from the floor? Dr. Burgos? Second by Ms. Emerson. Dr. Looney, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, I suppose this is a little bit awkward. I do not make a recommendation for you to move forward on this, but I respect the right and your privilege to move forward, and I do pledge my allegiance to this body should you decide to move forward with this resolution.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. Is there any discussion? Mr. Wimberly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to apologize because I am having a difficult time with my throat, but I've got some things I'd like to say, and if I have to, I'll whisper them, so please indulge me. First, I want to say adoption of standards is difficult, and it's almost always controversial. In my business life, I was one of the opponents of a standard that would set a protocol nationwide for emergency alerts, but a diverse group of practitioners, public safety officials, technologists finally came up with a standard that seemed to have good support, although we were certainly not in 100% agreement. However, the standards were not immediately widely adopted, and that was until the federal government stepped in. In this case, it was FEMA. FEMA said, you folks can do whatever you want. We don't have authority to tell you what to do anyway, but we support the standards that you came up with. Now, several years later, alerting in the U.S. has never been stronger, and it gets stronger every day. When FEMA adopted the standards, so did the companies and a number of other industry players, including the cellular companies. And now almost everyone in this room will get a loud alert on your cell phone if all of a sudden a tornado warning is issued for this area. People's lives have been saved via these alerts. Missing children have been found safe. And there's much more coming that will directly impact you and make you safer. This drastically improved capability is made because widespread adoption occurred with the standards with a bit of encouragement from the federal government. The standards are not perfect, and yes, they are being tweaked, but the standards are doing their job. I believe that much the same story is going on in education in this country now. A diverse group, not the federal government, came up with the standards, and the government said, okay, fine with us, and adoption spread. In our country, in our state, in our nation, we need strong educational standards. And yes, we are going to struggle with them, but we don't need to throw them out, and we certainly don't need to start over. The resolution does not suggest that we throw out the standards. It simply says we hold achievement and educational growth as two of the board's highest responsibilities. It says the board strongly supports and is proud of the challenging, rewarding, and excellent work performed by our teachers, our administrators, and our staff. We say that our school system consistently achieves high outcomes in student learning. We say we support local control of issues and decisions that have an impact on our schools. We say we favor and support curricula that emphasize critical thinking and analytical skills over rote repetition, constant and continuous testing and data mining for evaluating student performance. We say we've already added rigorous standards and have been given additional authority to further develop standards that meet or exceed Tennessee's expectations. We acknowledge that we must follow state laws, including one that says the federal government cannot set our standards, only the state can. The federal government doesn't set educational standards no more than it set the alerting standards. However, it can say that it likes the standards. And it says that we stand in support of locally derived educational standards and decision-making. Now, to me, there is nothing in this resolution that I find objectionable. I only hope that when the state of Tennessee revises the standards, and I'm sure the state will, that the revisions maintain consistency and do not include sweeping changes. Our teachers and our students don't need that. That testing is synced to the standards. That any revisions are made with the input of our professional educators, including our teachers, and that the standards remain synced to other educational standards across the nation so that we can tell how we're doing. In our county, we've made it clear that we want to be nationally recognized for academics, athletics, and arts, not recognized only by the state. So I will vote yes on this resolution. I thank my colleagues for the language and the compromise, and hope the board can soon move on to other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Next speaker, Mr. Peterson.
Ditto. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, I just the same. To piggyback what Mr. Wimberly talked about. I hope the parents and the media and all of those that are here tonight understand that. To me, this is a resolution for Williamson County, and I think as a board we came together and decided that that's what we want, and that's what we're here for. That's what we're expecting of that's what you expect of us. Nothing in here is negative. It basically gives us the autonomy to do what I believe we've been doing in Williamson County the entire time. And I just wanted to say that the teachers are going to continue to teach. Our students are going to continue to be taught by the best teachers, supervised by the best administrators, directed by the best central office staff, and I hope that we can add governed by the best school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Next, Mr. Hullett.
I'd just like to look each one of you in the eyes and tell you thank you. That the last 30 minutes of the 5.5-hour work session, if we could start our journey from that 30 minutes and erase everything else up until now, that would be a great beginning. It was a Herculean lift what we did, and I just got excited at the end because we were all talking about the same thing, and we were like, "Oh, what if we do this?" And it was a team, and it's what we've been looking for months. And so I just want to look each of you in the eye and say thank you for the compromise, thank you for the time, thank you for all the things that you did to make this work. And so, and as Ken said, it's a cornerstone of our teamwork. It's a good foundation for us, and I can support it as well because it supports what we do. It supports our teachers, supports our kids, our schools, our communities. So I'm thankful to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hullett. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Motion.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Thank you. Our next item of business is the bus driver compensation modification. Dr. Looney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. As I described earlier, we're really struggling in this, and the reality of it is it's a complex issue, and we don't have easy answers, but we do know that based on data that we are losing bus drivers and are failing to recruit bus drivers because of compensation. And so I'm asking for an immediate adjustment to the compensation level for bus drivers and the immediate implementation of the plan that's outlined on page 98 to include a finder's fee for someone to help us find a bus driver and that bus driver commits to stay and does so. I recommend your approval.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. Do we have a motion from the floor? Motion to approve by Mr. Hullett. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Wimberly. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Emerson? Yep. Should be on.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just had a question. I understand that we need bus drivers, but is there not, or is there an issue with bus drivers not being able to work a full, I guess maybe I'm thinking substitute bus drivers cannot come in because of limitations put on us by the health insurance, is that correct?
That's an outstanding question. The Affordable Health Care Act has placed some significant restrictions on our ability to employ substitutes. That does not pertain, Jason, does that pertain to substitute bus drivers as well?
Well, in this particular example, we do have budgeted into this year's budget full-time substitute drivers. Right. So when we talk about being 17 short, that includes some full-time substitute drivers where we have budgeted benefits. So while it is true that we're limited in how many hours a part-time employee can work because we haven't budgeted for benefits, in the example we've given in this particular memo, full staffing would include full benefits for every driver.
So I want to make sure I follow up on the first part of my answer though. So this doesn't affect bus drivers. The reality is we just don't have enough bus drivers, and the individuals that are talking about kids on a bus, it's because we're having to merge bus routes pretty much. But another problem that we're having, and we're going to be bringing to you probably in November a solution to that problem, and that is we have a significant substitute teacher shortage, and that has been brought about specifically because of the Affordable Health Care Act. So we are now limiting the number of hours that substitute teachers can work in schools, and our substitute teacher pool has not increased dramatically. So what's happening is people are capping out the number of hours they can work in a week's time, and that has resulted in a shortage of substitute teachers in schools, and we're having to take kids and split them up amongst other classes. So that's been a very big negative consequence of the Affordable Health Care Act on our district.
Thank you, Mrs. Emerson. Mr. Wimberly?
In the public comment period, Ms. Wells asked a good question, and that is, what type of background checks do bus drivers have to go through?
All of our bus drivers and all of our contracted workers go through a complete background check, both at the state and federal level.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wimberly. Mr. Gregory?
Thank you. I think it's important, and you didn't mention it, but the finder's fee is $500 for any employee in the school district who finds a bus driver. So keep an eye on Grandma and Grandpa, and if they're looking for something to do, that's a hefty little finder's fee. So let's get them in there.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. Our next item of business is the tenure recommendation of superintendent to board. Dr. Looney?
Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I read these individuals' names out loud?
Yes, sir.
This is a huge achievement for teachers, and so with your permission, I'd just like to honor them. I am making the recommendation that the following individuals receive tenure. Their principals report that they are exemplary educators and deserving of tenure under the Code of Tennessee. At Allendale Elementary, Misty Thomas. Bethesda Elementary, Jody Johnson. Chapman's Retreat Elementary, Sandra Parker. Clovercroft Elementary, Jennifer Gwaltney. and Marie Miller. College Grove Elementary, Emily Ferguson. Crockett Elementary, Susan Sievers and Andrea Smith. Fairview Elementary School, Sherry Keel and Tara Lerner. Grassland Elementary School, Mary Loring, Natalie Patterson. Heritage Elementary, Drew Perry and Angela Walters. Hunters Bend, Kelly Gunther. Kenrose Elementary, Tracy Bernstein, Caitlin Heller, and Megan Mahoney. Lipscomb Elementary School, Monica Brown and Brenda Vroon. Longview Elementary, Charnequa Austin Kennedy and Carrie Barrett. Nolensville Elementary, Michelle Horswell Johnston, Kristen Ramirez, and Chantel Watson. Oakview Elementary School, Krista Dawson. Perry Creek Elementary School, Elizabeth Hall and Margaret Harding. On page 100, board members, Scales Elementary School, Brooke Davis. Sunset Elementary School, Ann Bivens, Lindsay Yonkin. Trinity Elementary School, Lauren Blood, Aaron Smith. Walnut Grove, Savannah Hohen. Westwood Elementary School, Amanda Wilson. Winstead Elementary School, Carrie Franklin. Fairview Middle School, Amanda Dupree and Owen Grimmenstein. Grassland Middle School, Amy, I'm sorry, I'm not going to try that. Michelle Cross and Susan Oldham. Carol, you're an expert at that. I know you can do it. Page Middle School, Derek Pack, Philip Pelkey, and Lindsay Wells. Spring Station Middle School, Katie Barkley and Lori Drop. Sunset Middle School, Holly Clark, Laura Flores, Jacqueline Montelowen, and Dak Siverston. Woodland Middle School, Carrie Moeller. Centennial High School, Jill Green, Tanya Ray. Franklin High School, Bridget Bechtel, Michael Boyle, Cynthia Furman, Joanne Hayward, Lindsay McEwen, and Donald Webb. Independence High School, Donna Henderson, Sarah Reynolds, David Swanson. Page High School, Clayton Baker, Brandon Hitt. Ravenwood High School, Anna Crombie, Scott Crombie, Joy Ewing, Brittany Jordan, Natalie Marbury, and Amy Serdacki. Summit High School, Chelsea Graves, Alex Melton. At the ALC, that's the Alternative Learning Center, Christopher Holtree and Margaret Janes. And system-wide employees, Linda Judd, Anna Peterson, and Kathleen Peterson. Board members, I do recommend approval so these individuals can receive tenure.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. Do we have a motion from the floor? Motion to approve, Mrs. Emerson. Second by Ms. Curley. Discussion, Mr. Gregory.
I'll abstain from this vote because I do not believe in tenure. And so I don't want to vote no because I have nothing against these teachers. I'm sure they're fine, but I do not believe in tenure as what it is. I just can't go along with it, so I will abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote?
Your vote is 11 yes, 1 abstain.
Motion passes. The next item of business is the Board Code of Ethics, found on page 103. Dr. Looney.
Mr. Chairman and board members, I would recommend that you pass a code of ethics.
Thank you, Dr. Looney. Per the board policy, the board must approve a code of ethics by which individual members agree to conduct themselves. By tradition, the board has read this code out loud and concluded, following the vote, by signing the document. If we could each take a turn by reading one section, beginning with Mr. Peterson, and then following around. Let's start right now.
Article 1, my relations to our students. I will at all times think in terms of students first, always determining other important things according to how they affect the education and development of students.
Section 2. I will seek to provide equal opportunity for all students in academics, the arts, and athletics.
Article 2, my relationships with your community. Section 1. I will fairly appraise and support both present and future educational needs.
Section 2, I will represent at all times the entire school community and refuse to represent special interest or partisan politics.
Section 3, I will maintain open lines of communication with the community.
Article 3, my relation to our district employees. Section 1, I will support the employment of those persons best qualified to serve in our district.
Section 2, I will strive to secure resources that allow our employees to perform with excellence.
Section 3, I will celebrate employee accomplishments and refrain from public critique.
Article 4, my relations with other board members. Section 1, I will recognize that authority rests only with the board and official meetings, and that the individual member has no legal status outside of such meetings.
Section 2, I will at all times comply with the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, the Sunshine Law.
Section 3, I will make final decisions only after full discussion of matters at a board meeting.
Okay. Section 4, I will respect the opinion of other members and will accept the principle of majority rule.
Section 5, I will attend all regularly scheduled board meetings insofar as possible and become informed concerning the issues to be considered at those meetings.
Section 6, I will work with other board members to establish effective board policy and to delegate authority for the administration of the schools to the superintendent.
Article 5, my relations with our superintendent. Section 1, I will support full administrative authority as well as responsibility for the superintendent to properly discharge all professional duties.
Section 2, I will support superintendent accountability for working and requiring staff to work within the framework of policies set by the board.
Section 3, I will refer all complaints and concerns to the superintendent.
Article 6, my relations to myself. Section 1, I will inform myself about my duties and responsibilities and current educational issues by individual study and through participation in programs providing needed information.
Section 2, I will avoid being placed in a position of conflict of interest.
Section 3, I will refrain from using my position on the board for personal or partisan gain.
Section 4, I will take no private action that will compromise the board, the district, or administration.
Thank you, fellow board members. Do we have a motion from the floor? Motion to approve by Mr. Hullett, second by Mr. Peterson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, that's good. Seeing none, we'll move to a vote.
Your vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Motion passes. At this time, if you will give us a few seconds, we're going to go around and sign the document. Thank you, fellow board members. If there is no further business, this concludes the October meeting of the Williamson County Board of Education. I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, sir.